Today we're
Okay.
talking to Patricia Sung, who is an amazing a coach, mother advocate for people with ADHD. Can we start with the story of your diagnosis? What led to that?
I was actually diagnosed my freshman year of college. I had made it all the way through grade school, high school, National Honor Society. I was at Tulane University on an academic scholarship, and I thought I knew what I was doing. Lo and behold, I did not. I found that whenever I showed up freshman year, all that structure that comes with high school, where you show up and you go to first period, second period, it's directed for you. The teachers are very clear. This is your homework. Do the homework, turn it in, study this chapter, take the test, move on. That's not there in college. If I didn't show up at 8:30 class, there was no consequence. You didn't have to show up to all the classes. And until my grades showed that, in fact, you do.
Didn't have any problems in elementary school? There was no sign of having ADHD before then?
Oh, there for sure was. We just didn't know what to look for. When we think about how much we know now, and 35 years ago, we didn't know what to look for in little girls. If you go back to my report cards, in kindergarten, my teacher wrote that I cried too much. So I clearly was emotionally dysregulated. When you look back, you see those red flags along the way. But the more that you are an intelligent person, a hardworking person, the more you push to make things happen, it's much easier, not easier, maybe not the right word. We have been trained to make it work. We figure out how to organize ourselves.
Your
Science
parents were
class.
helping you, like you
Yes. And
got
I
a lot of
had
support at home.
very involved parents who made sure that I had those skills. But when it came to the time management and that structure was gone, all
Right.
when I get to freshman year and I'm failing out, I was in jeopardy of losing my scholarship. I don't get it. Why is this so hard now? I've always been very good at school. What happened? There's a combination between structure changed, the way that college professors teach, it's not as clear cut. Some of the tests are on what's in the class, and you better show up and take notes.
Mhm.
Sometimes they give you 300 pages to read, and you're responsible for figuring out what is important. I would start reading and get distracted and be like, I'll go back to that later. Skimming skills were not cutting it.
Figured out it was ADHD. What led to the discovery?
The general practitioner at school recognized it, said, I'd like you to go get tested, which
Oh,
was amazing. This is the year 2000. Generally speaking, girls were not really screened for that. I got the full battery workup. It was clear to see where the things, that's where I was able to get help.
when you look back at your life after you got the diagnosis, first of all, what did that feel like? And then when you got it, did you look back at your life and think, my God, it could have been different if I'd have known?
When I got the diagnosis, it was really surprising, to be honest. Being a very successful student, I never expected that to be the answer. Back then, it was just here's some Ritalin, take it when you study. Good luck. That was it. Thankfully, I got connected through the lovely lady who did my battery of tests. A friend of hers had ADHD. That friend took me under her wing and showed me how to study, how to use white noise. I had the Walkman with the cassette tape of white noise that I would listen to. I would go to the law library and study because it was actually quiet there. It really just felt, oh, okay, I need to do school differently. I need to put in a little more effort. I need to study harder and keep on trucking. It wasn't until I became a mom that I realized, oh, wow, this is not just a studying issue. This is so much more, especially the emotional regulation. I realized in doing the research, wow, this really could have been different for me. I can look back now that I understand it and see all the ways that perfectionism came in to as a coping mechanism that was running amok in my life. I would think that it had to be exact because people would tell me, you're making a careless mistake. Little girl Patricia thought, oh, that means I need to triple check it or quadruple check it. And then I would catch all these mistakes, which is not true. If you miss the mistake the first 3 times, the fourth time isn't going to solve it.
But you
And
talked
I
about
can look,
emotional dysregulation. Was that coming up with your kids?
oh, it started from day one. It's been shown that women struggling with ADHD have a lot more postpartum anxiety, depression struggles literally from day one. It was rough. I turned to my husband when my oldest was 2 weeks old and said, can I send him back? I don't
Oh,
want to do this anymore. It wasn't a joke. I was dead serious. I want my old life back. I
not
don't want
that
to do this
uncommon.
anymore. This
Yeah.
is not what I thought motherhood was going to be. I thought I was going to love it. I'm a teacher. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. My mom loved being a mom. I really thought it was going to be rainbows and unicorns. I was struggling so much. I realized this isn't sustainable. So thankfully, I got help. I had a postpartum psychiatrist who helped me get on track. That's where I started investigating, like, what if ADHD thing has to do with the fact that I can't cope? And then you throw in not sleeping, you throw in all the hormones. We know how much estrogen affects the way that our ADHD shows up. When you're getting into the 2-year-old and the 3-year-old phase where they have opinions, I was not staying calm when my oldest was getting upset. I was getting as upset as he was getting upset. I got more upset than he got more upset. All of a
How
sudden,
old are they
look,
now,
oh, my
Patricia?
boys now are 6 and 9.
6 and 9. Yeah. Like you've got some years ahead of you. When were you medicated? When did you first take medication?
I first took medicine in college when I was studying, but I only thought it was for studying. I
Okay.
didn't really take medicine for probably a decade. It wasn't until I was being treated for the postpartum anxiety. Once that got manageable, my psychiatrist was like, hey, I think that this is a piece of the puzzle that we need to sort out. We moved from the anxiety medicine over to the ADHD medicine. That was where I was able to create a level set. The emotional dysregulation was just a whole bear that I was not qualified to do
Oh,
on my own. I needed help. I took medication until I was pregnant again, and I opted not to take it, which was an interesting adventure. Once my son was a little bit older, I realized I would like to go back to this. This amount of emotional dysregulation is not where I want to be. I want that support. I've opted now to take medicine for the emotional dysregulation piece. I want to stay calm and focused for my children. This is a tool that allows me to
that's
stay on top of
amazing.
it.
And when did you start your work with moms? When did you decide to do that?
It's been about 5 years now. I started my podcast when my youngest was about a year old. I knew that it was my story to tell and help other moms. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to be miserable. You don't have to be yelling at everybody. You don't have to be hiding on the bathroom. You can find ways to take care of you so that you can show up and be the kind of mom that you want to be. It started as a project of love. Probably 2 years later, I started working with moms individually and teaching the skills that I took from being a middle school teacher and being a business owner and being a mom and all this research I did, then going to get a coaching certification. You just keep adding tools to your tool belt, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, like really got something going here.
Tell us about your retreats, because to me that seems like an organizational challenge, but also a wonderful idea.
My goal in the retreat is to allow the moms to turn off their brains. You don't have to be in charge of the schedule. You don't have to be in charge of the food. Nobody needs to take a nap at a certain time. That weight that moms carry all the time, that something always has to get done, that amount of responsibility weighs on us. We do it because we love our kids. But to take off that responsibility and set it down for a minute and let someone else take care of you is huge. That's a way that we can prevent being burnt out. Let someone else take care of us for the weekend. I organize literally everything. Most importantly, though, we get to hang out with other moms who get it. When you talk about the things that you're going through, you're not getting that snarky look. Instead, you're getting a mom who's, oh, wow, I've been there too. I hear you. I see you. You want a hug? Like
That's huge.
this
Such a huge
community
help.
really means a lot to
Yeah.
me and the other moms. Originally, when the mom said, hey, we want to hang out, I was like, ooh, that's going to be a lot of organizing. I can't do it all myself. It's not possible. So how do I do the things that I'm really good at and then find other people to help me at the things that I struggle with? I don't have to do everything.
Delegating, you fit the model of a typical ADHD entrepreneur who comes up with these wonderful ideas but needs help with the execution. The Inattentive ADHD Coalition is strongly in favor of diagnosing all students at the age of 7. How would your life have been different? Do you sometimes look back and wonder?
Oh, for sure. I do like to think it turned out okay. But that's because I've spent the last 10 years working really hard on myself. Not being hard on myself, working hard on myself. I'm in therapy. I have coaches. I am learning about who I am. I understand my ADHD. I wish I could just go back and give 8-year-old version of me a hug and say, this isn't your fault. Here's some strategies. I see you. I can see how hard you're trying. And I think back to the people pleasing tendencies and the perfectionist tendencies and how shy I was, painfully shy. I really worried about what other people thought about me. I would have been a far more self-confident person had I known that this is why I was struggling so much. I don't think I realized how much I was struggling. You see other people and it looks easy for them. You beat yourself up or you start trying really hard or both. I just kept trying really hard and then telling myself, like, why couldn't I figure that out? Why was AP biology so hard? How come everybody else can do this? I had this narrator telling me that I stink at everything. I was working 3 times as hard as everyone else, and I didn't know that I was working that hard to keep up. You don't necessarily see how other people are doing things. I would have had much more grace for myself. I would have realized the places where it is, hey, tough it out, figure this out. And where is it, hey, it's time to ask for help. No matter how many times you check this math worksheet, you're not going to see that error. How can we find a different way of doing this that you're not then mad at yourself and spending 4 hours on something that should have taken 30 minutes? There's a lot of ways that it could have been better, but they're all underlying.
If you were to go back to the 7-year-old, what would be the best advice that you could give her, aside from maybe getting tested and treated?
A lot of hugs. I didn't know. There's so much I didn't know. Just giving myself a big hug. That would be the first thing. Letting your kids know how much you love them and how much you see how hard they're working. That's a really big issue in folks who aren't diagnosed until later. There's just so much shame and guilt carried of how you should have done things better to say, hey, it's okay. We see how hard you're trying. When it comes to the practical things, realizing I didn't have the words for a lot of things. I was a smart kid and a very verbose child when I felt safe, but I didn't have the words to explain why I was so frustrated. I think back to little me was doing ballet and the teacher was really mean. I said, I want to quit ballet, but nobody asked, why do you want to quit ballet? I actually loved ballet. My teacher wasn't a very nice person. I wish I had the words to say, I really love ballet, but Miss Tony, I still remember her name at 42. Miss
Oh.
Tony wasn't nice. To put words to what I was struggling with. That would be the thing that I wish I could give. It's hard for 7-year-olds to grasp that. But I think just giving your kids the time and the connection to talk through things with them and really understand what they're going through. A lot of times as grown-ups, we're just like, oh yeah, you don't like ballet? Fine, we just move on. That connective time to be like, okay, tell me about this. What's going on?
Exactly. What's going
And
on is one of the best questions you can ever ask a kid.
I think that really would have made a huge difference in the self-confidence piece of how could I have learned to trust myself more? How could I learn to trust my intuition? When you know something in your gut, you just know it. How is it that you know it? What are those signals telling you? You know the answer here. I think a lot of us are not in tune with that. But for those of us with ADHD, we do have a really good gut intuition, but we've learned to ignore that. People told us we were too sensitive or too talkative or too dramatic or whatever it is. The two fill in the blank. Had I been able to say, what does that really feel like? How do you know? And tuned into the core of who I am, it would have pushed my confidence up.
Your 2 sons, what do they think of the work that you're doing?
They're so supportive. I'm very honest with them. I talk about ADHD a lot. I explain to them when I'm struggling. Last night, I forgot that we had swim lessons. I told them we could play Battleship. And then I realized we have swim in 20 minutes. My son's like, how do you not remember we have swim? And I have to say, I'm sorry, buddy. This is part of having ADHD is I forgot we have swim. I am so sorry. We'll find another time to play Battleship. We have to get swimsuits on now.
Owning it and
Owning, and I apologize.
having ADHD. There are a lot of downsides, but one clear upside is the ability to get to know yourself as well as you now know yourself. A lot of people who haven't faced the kind of crises that we face never get to that point where they have to know how their brain works. And that extra work that you did and all that discipline that you had to master as a kid maybe is paying off now. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've started other businesses.
Yes, I started my first business at 12. I had a craft business back in the 90s. I had my little craft booth at local shows. I used my babysitting money as seed money. I have a real estate company, long-term and then short-term vacation rentals that we own and manage, juggling many things all at once. We've owned a makerspace. I love starting projects and kicking them off and getting them going. I know I need a team that comes behind me and keeps carrying that on. After I've set the vision and the standards and trained everybody on what to do, then I need the people behind me to have my back. I'm a great 80%er, and then around 85%, I'm like, okay, what's the next thing? I'm done. I'm going to get everybody moving. And then the people around me to wrap it up and cross the T's, dot the I's.
Do you have a new plan for your group?
I think if I made any new things, my team might kick me out. I do group coaching focused around emotional regulation as well as setting up our schedules as a mom. How do we create ADHD friendly rhythms? If you don't like the word change, rhythms is a friendlier word. ADHD friendly rhythms and how you run your day and being able to get all the little things done that need to get done as a mom. As someone with ADHD, I'm actually excellent at planning and making an organized plan and organizing my time in an ADHD friendly way. If I'm not on my rhythms, 2 hours goes by and I'm like, wasn't I supposed to be somewhere else right now? This is a skill that I have learned and I love sharing. It is possible to feel good about the way that you run your day, especially as a mom. I really want moms to know that you're not broken. You're not alone. There's other people that can support you. When you do that for yourself, you can then turn around and support your kids and teach them those skills so that they learn how to be organized, how to show up for things on time. Use that creative brain to do whatever your gift is and lean into that. When it comes to how do we get girls diagnosed by 7, it's by educating the families and the parents. It's like a 75% chance that you got your ADHD from one of your parents. We look, where did it come from? Mom or dad? If we're educating them, that's when the kids are going to get the help that they need. How do we educate families? When you have a family full of undiagnosed ADHD, everybody thinks that's normal.
Right.
Nobody thinks, oh, that sure is odd that you keep losing those keys. It's everybody loses their keys. But yeah, everybody in this family does because they're all got undiagnosed ADHD. How do we get into those families and start educating there? It'll ripple out to, okay, how do we educate the teachers? How do we educate the doctors and the professionals who are working with them? Family education is where it's at. The moms and the dads are the ones who are going to make the generational changes so this cycle doesn't just keep happening over and over again.
On your blog, you wrote recently about hormones. What needs to be known about girls and hormones and ADHD?
Often where we see girls get diagnosed is in the different hormone shifts. You've got puberty, you've got matrescence, which is becoming a mom, so the pregnancy and all the hormones that go with that. You've got perimenopause into menopause. When those big hormonal shifts are happening, that's when we get diagnosed. Our estrogen levels are changing and that magnifies our symptoms, the change in estrogen. When we understand how our cycles and the different seasons of being a female matter in our ADHD, that will really move us in the right direction. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of scientific research because women tend not to be the choice of research projects because we have hormones that change. They prefer to do scientific research on men, which I get, but we need the hormones. They've recently come out with a study about if it's safe to breastfeed while taking stimulant medication. We made it all the way to 2021 or 2022 before this was studied.
Wow.
Have a really long way to go in medical research around women hormones in general, let alone how it relates to our ADHD.
I really appreciate you bringing this up, as well as so many other really important points. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today. Cynthia, did I forget anything?
No, we covered all the points, but I had an idea while you were talking, Patricia. You are wonderful giving the emotional context to ADHD. My thought is whether we could do a video or a live event, but where we're talking to young girls who have just been diagnosed and how they learn to accept themselves with this diagnosis and how the parents can play a role in that. How does the child think about it, develop that self-confidence?
I would love that. One of my biggest pain points is that we're not diagnosing early enough. I want parents to have the resource. I firmly believe that you need to tell your child about their diagnosis. When kids don't know, they just assume it's them. They know that something's wrong. They notice that people think they're weird. We know when people are looking at us differently. When kids don't know why, they think it's them. I want parents to feel really comfortable talking about it in a way that is very accepting and open. We don't have to hide it because it's not a bad thing.
Right.
It's the way that you were created. We're going to have tough spots, but there's nothing wrong with you. We can figure this out.
I just was so moved when you were talking about what would have made a difference to you as you were younger. Some people say, oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to think about it. It's too painful. So
a lot of therapy.
Maybe if we get these girls young enough, they don't need therapy. My goal is they grow up without masking. They grow up with good self-esteem and self-confidence, not needing all this repair work. I've never talked to a single person with ADD who got diagnosed later in life who said they felt different. They knew they were different growing up. They just knew. They couldn't put their finger on it, but they knew. That's one reason parents should talk with them about it, because they know. They tell themselves a bad story about why they're different. I have a problem is women who say, I was fine till I wasn't. I think by saying that, it takes the onus away for early diagnosis. I challenge those women. Were you really fine till you weren't? Were you just surviving instead of thriving? A psychiatrist who only works with adults told me that sometimes the children's pediatricians don't recognize the damage of going undiagnosed because they don't see them into adulthood. If they see the girl doing fine, they're not looking into it thoroughly enough.
When people say they were fine until they weren't, fine means nothing catastrophic happened. If you really dig in, usually you're like, oh, look, there's also an eating disorder. And oh, look, I were smoking pot for all years of high school. There's usually something they got by. I didn't die.
I guess
usually it wasn't actually fine.
When they were saying I was fine till I wasn't, I was thinking they were saying I didn't need an ADHD diagnosis until this point in my life. We're born with our ADHD. If we could get diagnosed at birth, that would be the best. But we don't have the way to do that yet. That's why we target by age 7, because that's when most knowledgeable people feel comfortable making the diagnosis.
The more that we bring the education to the people who are working with the kids in that early spot, the better.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
It was great talking with y'all. And
Yeah.
I
And
applaud you
it,
for your cause.
You're a wonderful spokesperson.
I love what I do, and I'm lucky that I get to do it every day.
Someone also said they felt lucky to have ADHD because you push yourself to find your passion. Many people don't find that in their lives because they don't have that impetus.
When you have good guidance, you can do amazing things with ADHD. It's all the people who fall through the cracks and are in the prison pipeline. Those are the people who don't feel like ADHD is a gift because it's not for them. Those are the kids that we need to be catching.